Hey everyone, Icon here. Thanks so much for checking out another episode of Esports Analysis. Today, we are hopping on board with SCUMP, changing things up a little bit. We've been doing a lot of formal and stuff lately, but we're hopping on board with SCUMP as they're playing Rammaza Hardpoint, and they're actually playing the Minnesota ROKKR. So it's been probably a week or so since we've seen them play the Minnesota ROKKR, but essentially what's happening right now as we jump into the actual analysis, they're trying really hard to flip, and you can see that they were already successful. So just between my head and SCUMP's head, I'm going to draw on the minimap there so you guys can see exactly what was happening there at the beginning of this match. But SCUMP started right here, so they got the spawn that you don't want, right? So as it's about to rotate from P1 over to P2, P2's on this side of the map, and P2 and P3 are the two hard points where you can really max out all 60 seconds of that hard point. So from the beginning here, rather than sending all of their resources over towards P1, what Chicago did is they sent a couple over towards P5, over towards ammo, and if you get around through electronic shop and back construction, that's when you are successful at flipping spawns, and that's what they were able to do. So now with about 5 seconds left, not only do they have a 20-point lead, looked like SCUMP needed one more bullet there on GodRx, and he got killed. So that was traded out, and then Gunless traded that. So either way, as Seth comes up off of spawn right here, you can see that they have the spawns that you want. So as we're getting throughout this, my guess would be a nice two-piece from SCUMP. Wow, his aim, I did watch this through one other time, but I didn't really necessarily, I was paying so much attention to spawns and whatnot that wasn't quite aware of how much he was frying at the beginning of the map here. But as you can see, they had like a 20-point lead as this rotated back to P2, and now they have what looks like it's going to be the remainder of P2. That would be my guess. So they'll probably have a fairly large lead as this rotates back to P3. And man, they just did it again. So as this is about to rotate, let's go ahead and let's point this out. We're at P2 currently, but it's about to go over to P3 over on the opposite side, over towards Barbershop. And as that's about to happen, you want to have this back spawn. And for a split second, it looks like they had that pushed out. SCUMP was over here in Ruins by P5 when he went down, and it looks like the rest of his teammates went down over there also. That could have been a really big transfer, right? Because if they're able to get 40 points or so in P3, then now all of a sudden they're up by 90 as it's about to rotate over to P4, and they really could have made something happen. But a little bit unfortunate there if you're a Chicago fan, and a nice job by Minnesota of locking this down. Now, one thing that I will say about this map is that normally when you watch scrims on this map, the score is super close. And the reason why it's always so close is because this map just constantly ping-pongs back and forth from one side to the other. So as you can see on the minimap, P3 is on the right-hand side over in Barbershop, P4 is over on the left-hand side over in Construction. So as this is about to rotate, all SCUMP is doing here is he's just watching for those flanks over through P5 as they're going to be trying to flip spawns, because as this rotates back to P4, so again on the minimap, I'll draw it real quick. If I'm Minnesota, P3 is right here. Of course, you want to send people through mid-map. You want to send people up top over by Construction, maybe even middle through dirt, trying to flip this way. But if you could sneak somebody through Ruins and do the same route as we talked about right at the beginning of the game, if you can make that happen, then you'll be back P4. You'll have spawns for P4. And even if you don't have spawns for P5, that's kind of okay, because if you have P4 and then you give up, maybe you split time on P5. If you have P4, and then you have P1 on second set of rotations, and you have P2, now all of a sudden that's 2 out of 3 hills where you can really stack time up. So that's potentially what Minnesota was trying to do, but you can see right there, SCUMP was just trying to get through Ruins to set up spawns for P5, and he ended up going down. So we'll see if they can flip this. Again, a lot of these hard points are really hard to flip just because the spawns are so sticky, but it does look like there's a battle at the back. Looks like Formal took out Silly, and with that spawn right there, what Seth just got on Asim, that looks like spawns are absolutely going to be flipped. So my guess would be at the end of the first set of rotations, this is going to be a pretty big lead for Chicago. Unless, of course, they get pushed out, right? Anything can happen, especially in a game like Call of Duty. We saw that from Celium on this map, actually against Minnesota, where he ended up getting like an 8 spree inside of P5 and ended up pushing out to the other side. So even though they're not really getting all of that time. That was a really nice job of contesting. Now, all of a sudden, there's only 20 seconds left in P5. So if you're Minnesota, that's a job well done, right? You didn't flip spawns. You didn't get the majority of the time there. But what you did do is you were able to take like 30 seconds or so where nobody was inside and you were inside. So just that little bit of contest, they weren't set up for that hill. They didn't have spawns. They weren't the team that should have won that hill, but they made it difficult and they took like 20 or 30 seconds away from Chicago. So that's what's considered a success, even though that's not something that you're going to see necessarily on the scoreboard, right? So with this game currently, it's a 150 to 100 ball game, and it looks like as we're about to go back through to the second set of rotations, Chicago is set up for the P1 to P2 transfer. Although I'm a little concerned, let me show you real quick. So this will be kind of hard to see. You just kind of have to visualize this a little bit. But if you're watching up here, SCUMP is over here right by the Hardpoint, right? And they have 2 in construction, and they have 2 that are dead. You can see ENVOY and Gunless are dead right here. What they don't have is they don't have anybody watching this entire side of the map. So essentially what that would be, now if I'm drawing on the mini-map, they don't have anybody watching over here at all. So I'm not sure what's going to happen here, but my guess might be that they might have somebody flanking through from Minnesota. All they have to do is have one person that gets to the back over here, and if they're able to make that happen, then all of a sudden they're going to have spawns as it rotates back to P2. And if you're Chicago, you don't want that because right now you have a 50-point lead, and you would be set up for P2. So let's see where SCUMP spawns. I'm interested to see if they got pushed out or not. So not really. So that was an instance where Minnesota could have capitalized had they had somebody on flank, but it just didn't work out that way. However, it's not all bad because they do have people inside of P1. So even though they're not flipping for P2, they're getting basically all of this time inside of P1. Think about it. We said as it rotated back to P1, it was like a 150 to 100 game. And right now, when this comes up at the end of these last few seconds, they're only going to be down by 15 points. So that was a really nice job of them of pushing through to P1 and capturing basically the majority of the time inside of P1. So with that, this is normally the time in the video where I go ahead, I turn up the volume so you guys can listen to teams, to the communications and strategy and all that stuff. So with that, I'll still be able to tune in and chime in on things that I think are really important. But with that, let's turn up the audio. Let's let you guys listen in and hear exactly what they're talking about.
I'm out of here.
Going rogue.
Yeah, I needed top mid. I'm trying to get top mid control.
Yo, once one truck on me.
Top mid dead.
No, that's good. I have real
Yeah,
pillars.
go
right through it.
Yeah, one pillars on me.
Every pillars help.
Just head glitch, head glitch.
Splash back pillars.
What's back alley, back alley?
Back direction. I got one.
Alley's still spawn there.
Me front.
This is actually 2 rotations in a row. The first set of rotations and the second set of rotations as it's heading from P2 to P3. That SCUMP went top platform and tried to clear them out of ammo and ruins over there. Both times he was unsuccessful, but it's an interesting little note about the strategy.
I'll see them back out.
Watch over here. You can push.
He's in pillars. I'm waiting.
I don't see this guy rugs.
I killed the guy.
Rugs dead. One more hill.
I naded that guy deep. Deep.
He's close pillars.
Nice,
3
one
seconds.
deep.
We spawned right.
Back
Okay,
up,
hit
back
the
up,
sun,
back
hit
up.
the sun, yeah.
If you're Minnesota, this is a massive hold, right? They were down again by about 50 or 60 points, and they're able to capitalize and get all of this. If they get the rest of this time, it's basically going to be a 10-point game as it rotates back to P4. See, I don't love this from Chicago.
You dropped. One's top plat.
Let's see if I can pause this on time. So if I'm just looking at the minimap right now. So minimap in the top left-hand corner of your screen. What I want to point out is that Chicago just had a couple people over here towards the current hard point. And again, they don't have anybody on this left-hand side of the map. So Chicago is set up for P4, right? They're all set up in here, but they don't have anybody watching, again, this entire half of the map. So they have no idea if somebody's flanking through on that side of the map. We'll see what happens, but they're so close, right? If they capitalize on P4, then it doesn't really matter what happens on P5, and they can probably win on P2. It just looks like they're not really paying all that much attention to what's happening over here. And luckily, Scump gets this spawn.
Yeah, he's here close to me.
He's sick, man. Dirt spawns.
Even with all the resources that were dedicated to P4, we just talked about how everybody was inside construction except for Scump. They still got pushed out. That could be what ends up winning Minnesota this game. If they can hold on to the majority of the points here inside of P4,
Got hill.
then essentially it's going to take the 30-40 point consistent lead that Chicago had, and it's going to give it to Minnesota.
Paint dead. I got paint.
Yeah, front there. And one's top middle. One's top middle, silly.
In front.
One shot, Justin, dude.
We spawn here.
Maybe.
Front door.
It's a couple times in a row I've seen Arcity seems a little defeated. We'll see how he talks the rest of the
Front door, I
game.
don't see anything.
I'm trying to go loading right now.
I think they're going for the hold, pimps. One's top rugs. I'm absolute.
You guys
Staying
wanna
up.
go on the back or
Top
what?
loading dead.
All right, so Scump just said I think they're going for the hold, and essentially what that means is if we look at the score, in the bottom left-hand corner, it's 243 to 197. So what Scump was talking about when he says I think they're going for the hold, if Minnesota, let me go ahead and draw on the mini-map, if Minnesota can get those kills out here near mid-map, then essentially they're trying to hold this down. And if they do that, what that's going to do is that's going to force Chicago to spawn back here. And you can see that they need 53 points to win. So if they can get all 60 of those points, then they're going to end up winning on P5. So when he talks about going for the hold, he's saying that they're just going to rotate. They're going to try to hold them near mid-map and win on top of P5.
Up right
I'm
up,
front right
baby.
now.
I got him. Second pierce.
Broke's dead, got him. Waiting for
Yo,
you.
he's back
Hill
alley.
dead.
Nice, one back alley. one
Now,
back
if you're
alley.
Chicago, all you have to do is hold on for another like 3 seconds. So right now, once that crossed to 47 seconds on the current hardpoint, that means that Minnesota can't win on top of P5.
Push up the back. Dead.
Big one. I have a trophy here in the back.
I'm staying
Lane
up.
and smoke.
One thing I don't like is it looks like Chicago
One
flipped.
shot pillars. Alex, absolute.
So this map isn't going to be decided on P5. So that's why I don't really love the fact that they flipped. They only need 7 seconds.
Got him.
Run now. Run now, guys.
As of right now, they have 6.
Alley.
Got one no. Got one no.
Nice,
Can
one
they
more,
clutch
one more.
up?
Other paranoid bit me on there, guys.
Nice, good job. We can win off this.
Yeah, we went
They
off
can
that.
win. They got contested. Envoy with a kill on Silly, and then he got traded out by Alex, and that's going to be all it takes. Are they able to hold on?
Absolute.
Oh, man. All they need is 2 seconds, and they have nobody. Okay, so let me talk about this. I'll wait until Scump comes up here, but you can see how things have turned for the worse. So Scump's alive right now. It's 248 to 223. They don't have spawns, they don't have control of hill, and they have nobody on flank. So Minnesota, who's inside the hill, has the back construction spawns, and they have control of P1. So essentially what's happening is they're forcing Chicago up this rug stairs right here or by mid-plat. They have nobody on flank. So all they have to do is just watch P1 and just get this choke point right there. If they can just get kills in that choke point, then not only could they win off of P1, but my guess would be that they would have positioning for P2 also if it goes that far.
Close.
Nothing mid-plat, guys.
Yo, pinching dead.
Outer dead.
Silly with a 2-piece. Formal traded it out.
I'm climbing the
I
ladder.
tried smoking.
Have a trophy on hill. It's flash. Back down spawn. Back
They
down.
have
Did you just step
I got
on him?
both. One more hill me. I'm trying.
Oh, Envoy killed.
They're up here.
There they go. There they got it. Wow. I actually didn't remember, as I was calling that, I didn't remember who ended up winning, but at the end there, it's a flood going into P1, right? It's just whoever can get in there and try to get those last 3 or 4 seconds. Nice job from Chicago of securing those kills, right? It was pretty difficult to go ahead and push through that one choke point. You can see on screen here that Scump ended up dropping 30, Formal dropped 30. Honestly, Envoy with 28, Gunless with 28, that's a really nice job of slaying. Arcides was the low man on the totem pole for both squads. Silly with the 31. So overall, just a really competitive, a really evenly matched match there. Evenly matched game that you saw there. But with that, guys, if you're new around here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I put out new videos every single day when I'm breaking down scrims, whether it's Chicago or Atlanta or Minnesota or whoever. So if you're interested in that content, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Leave a like before you head on your way. If you have any comments whatsoever, put them down below. I love the interactions. And with that, I will catch you in tomorrow's upload.